Hey, what's up guys? Sloth King here. So today I'm going to be showing you guys how to repair some curb rash, any dings or scrapes that you have on your wheels. It's a little bit of a tedious process, but if you do it this way, you should have no issues following it step by step. So anyway, let me show you what's going on. So I have a separate set of wheels for my Supra. This is actually the stock 5-spoke that came on, I believe it was 91 to 92, or maybe 90 to 92 cars. So I picked these up at a junkyard about a year or so ago. And if you can see, there's some curb rash here. Which one's the worst wheel? This one's pretty bad. I got on one of the spokes, I got this all chewed up right here. Yeah, it's not that pretty. Yeah, if you can look around the edge right here, there's definitely some curbing going on. This part's not going to be too bad to repair, but it's mostly stuff like this. This is what we're going to be targeting today. You can see it's all chewed up right there. So yeah, I'm going to show you how to do it with just some common tools. Now I do have like a DA sander. I do have a rotary tool that I can use, but I'm not going to use that. I'm just going to show you guys how to use sandpaper and some body filler on how to do this. So let's dig in and let me show you what we're going to need. So first things first, we're going to need a degreaser. This is, I forget what kind of degreaser it is, but it's just super strong degreaser that I have. You can actually just use like some dish soap if you need to, just make sure it's like concentrated. You're going to need a scrub brush, something with like stiffer bristles to break up some of the grime that might be stuck on the face, and especially inside of the barrel itself. Let me show you that real quick. So we want to get this all clean, because if we're handling it, we do not want to mess up any of the prepping and painting process, because that is 90% prep, 10% of it is going to be painting. So after we go through and clean it, you're just gonna like air dry it or use some compressed air, whatever you have, to let the whole wheel dry fully. All right, so for the sanding process, what we're going to need is 80 through 400 grit. Just to start with, we are going to use some 600 and or 800 later on. You're going to need a block of some sort. That way you can keep it on a flat surface if you're blocking, like block sanding. This makes it so there's no divots whenever you're sanding, like no low spots. So let's say there's see this gouge right here. We want to make sure we sand it flat. We don't want to just like push down with our hands, because if we use just hand pressure, there's going to be a small divot that we're going to see. So with sandpaper, the lower the number, the more coarse it is. The higher the number, the finer it is. So you always want to start off with a more coarse kind of sandpaper, especially if we're going to be using some body filler, which I'll get to that in a second. Using a more coarse grit will allow the body filler to latch on to the metal, and that's what we're going to want. And then we're going to slowly sand it out so that way it's smooth, so when we start painting, you're not going to see any of the sand scratches. So moving on to the body filler. So there's two different types that you can use. This is just regular Bondo body filler. There is a metal type of body filler. I've seen like some mixed things on if you're using it on wheels, you want to use like a metal one. But for today, this is what I have on me. This is what I use to repair my Supra. So I'm going to use this and see if there's any negative effects. I will be the guinea pig. So if it doesn't hold up on my wheels, I'll let you guys know. But you can pick up, if you're buying it, go ahead and get the metal reinforced one. For the body filler, you're going to need either a sheet of metal or a piece of cardboard, and wrap the cardboard in like parchment paper, because when we add a hardener to it, the cardboard's porous, so it's going to soak up all the hardener and it's not going to cure properly. All right, moving on to the paint. So I'm sticking with a more factory look. For the primer, you want to pick up a filler primer. That way if there's any deeper scratches, it will fill that up. Especially if we're, using like some of the sandpaper right here, we want to fill those scratches a little bit. It will make our life easier. Right now I'm using the silver mica. It's just a duplicolor perfect match. You can get any color that you want. And then pick up some clear coat for wheels. Now, the difference between like regular clear coat and this clear coat, it will resist a lot of the chemicals that comes in like the brake pads, or like if you use brake parts cleaner, you know, just whatever you use to degrease your wheels, this will hold up for it. And then of course you're gonna need some gloves, some type of rag, and for the Bondo, we're going to use some lacquer thinner. This is just so that way we can clean up our tools that we're going to be using. And last but not least, you're going to need a mask. We're sanding metal down, we're sanding paint. We don't want to breathe any of that in, so get like an N95 mask for sanding, and then whenever you're painting, ideally you want to pick up a proper respirator. That way you don't breathe in any of the paint fumes. Now, I have both of those on me. I'll show you what they look like. Now, this is the proper respirator. This is about 30 bucks that I picked it up a couple of years ago. I need to replace the cartridges on it, but yeah, this is what I'm going to be using for sanding and painting. That way I don't breathe anything in. And of course, you guys know what the regular white N95 masks look like. Well, I thought I had one, but I'll just pop it up on the screen what it looks like. You guys know. So anyway, now that all of that is covered, let's go ahead and start digging in. First things first, let's clean these wheels. All right, so first things first, guys. If you have any of these weights left on your wheels, you can go ahead and take like a flathead screwdriver or a pry bar, and then you're gonna take like a dead blow hammer. This is actually all I have on me. Some type of hammer actually, whether it be like a claw hammer, but we're gonna make do with what we have today, okay? Hit it right here on the corner. And slowly knock it up. There we go. Cool. I hate those. I prefer the stickers that go on the inside. All right, next, since I still have some valve stem seals, we're going to remove those. So you can do it a couple different ways. You can just pull it out, or you can grab a knife, cut that piece off right there, and then we should be able to pull it through. Just like that. Do that to all 4 wheels, and then we can move on and start cleaning. All right, so we're gonna focus on this wheel, but while we spray this down and actually scrub it out, go ahead and start soaking all of your other wheels as well. So that way, when we get to it, it'll be pretty easy. And ideally, you wanna use some warm or hot water. It will break down the dirt and grime a lot faster. All right, guys, 1 wheel done, 3 more to go. All right, guys, I have the wheels all clean. Tried to clean the inner barrels as much as I could. Oh, that was a lot of like grime and like rust and whatever was caked up on there. So, like I said, let those dry, thoroughly dry. You can hit them with some compressed air, wipe them down. And after they're all dry, we can begin repairing any of the curb rash, and then sand the whole thing and then prep it for paint. All right, guys. So now that my wheel is nice and clean and it's dried off, we're gonna go ahead and start sanding the areas that we need to repair. So we're gonna start off with 80 grit. I have my block on me. And since the edge of my wheel, the rim of the wheel is flat, I can actually use my block on this. But if yours is more rounded, you're gonna have to use it by hand. So you can grab your sandpaper and then just like fold it like that, and then follow the contour of the rim. It looks like this wheel, I don't need to do that. Well, maybe over here. Anyway, this is where you put on your mask, and I actually found my small N95. So go ahead and pop this on, and then we're gonna start sanding just a little bit. See, right now, I'm just trying to take off the marred high spot right here. I can feel it go up. Since this is like dug into the wheel, we are still gonna have to put some body filler on here. Now, when you're doing this, you want to go a little past the section, so that way you don't see like a divot or anything like that. And honestly, you don't want to sand too much, because if you sand too much, then it's gonna kind of look really bad and gonna compromise the wheel a little bit. This little piece right here, this is where it comes in handy to use it by hand. Huh, no pun intended. All right, this part right here where it curves down, this is where we're gonna have to go in by hand. And then this top part, we can hit it with a block. See what I'm doing here? I'm trying to follow the curve a little bit to try to round that mar out. All right, now let's hit the inside just a little bit more. All right, now with it all prepped, I have it all ready to go to start putting some body filler on it. And one thing I forgot to mention, go ahead and get some isopropyl alcohol. This is what we're going to use to clean the surface to make sure that the Bondo properly adheres. All right, now with my surface all cleaned, if you follow the directions, it says for a golf ball size of body filler, it will take 1 1/4 inch strip of hardener, which a golf ball size will be plenty for what we're doing. Might be overkill, actually. So go ahead and plop that on. That's about a flattened golf ball. We're gonna go ahead with that because I'm not gonna need any more than that for just this one wheel. All right, make sure you knead your hardener. This will make sure it's all mixed and it won't come out too runny. Mine's been sitting for a little bit, but it'll be fine. One 1/4 inch. That should be good. Oh, that might be a little too much, but that just means it will dry faster. So now we're going to take our Bondo card and then we're going to mix it up. Make sure you fold into it. Just keep overlapping like this. We want to mix that hardener thoroughly. It will turn like this, this red kind of color, or whatever color hardener that you have. And then I'm going to scrape off what I have on here with my knife. All right, that's thoroughly mixed. So let's go ahead and start applying it. We only have about 5 minutes. All right, so I'm going to tackle the big section right here. So you want to apply it and push down, get it really deep into that crevice. We're trying to fill our nicks, remember that. And then with this piece right here, I'm going to take it, slide it over. Just kind of follow the contour of it, all right? Now, since this is on a curved surface, we might have to shape it with our fingers just a little bit. This is going to get messy. This is where the gloves come in, all right? Now remember, we want to build it up. That way we can sand it down. And same thing with our sides right here. Just go ahead and hit it. Try to follow the shape of the wheel that you have. So if it's like a sharp edge, try to make a sharp edge on it. And if you need to do it by hand, do it by hand. Uh-oh, this is starting to dry. I added way too much hardener. Let me go ahead and mix up a new batch. So now that I have another batch mixed up, let's go ahead and quickly work. Let's see, I have a little ding here. And the flatter that you put it on, the easier the time you will have trying to sand it down. All right, that's it. Now you let it dry. All right, guys, it is day 2, and I have all the wheels prepped with some body filler on it. All right, to quickly go over the sanding procedure, I'm going to start off with 80 grit just to knock off a lot of the body filler. I'm going to move up to 180 and then finish it off with 320. Usually I would go to like 180 to 220, then 320, but I'm out of 220, so it's not that big of a deal. As long as we get all that taken care of and we minimize how deep the scratches are, we won't have an issue. So let's go ahead and dig right in and just go over the procedure. All right, and make sure you are wearing your respirator or a mask. All right, 80 grit. See how it's knocking it down pretty fast? That's what we want. And if your sandpaper starts to get clogged, you can just hit it. You can do that a few times. And once it's fully covered like this, you want to replace your sandpaper because it's not doing anything when it's clogged. If you go in a crosshatch pattern, like going this way, then moving it and going the other way, you will sand down your body filler a lot faster. And around your curved surfaces, this is where you're going to grab like a separate piece of sandpaper and just follow along the edge. Now, if the top part of the rim is flat, you can take your block and just go around the top part. But any kind of angle that you have, you want to keep that round curve to it, all right? This part, I put way too much Bondo on it. So this is where if you're smoothing out, that's why you want to smooth out a lot. You don't want to build up too high because you're just going to eat away at your sandpaper trying to sand this down. So that was a mistake on my part. All right, guys, I got it down to the point where we can move on to 180. But since it's getting dark out, I have to show you tomorrow. So I'll show you tomorrow morning. All right, now that we've gone over this whole thing with 80 grit, we're gonna move up to 180 grit. Usually I'd move up to like 120, but moving up to 180 is fine too. We're gonna get rid of the deeper scratches. We're going to start feathering in this body filler. So feathering means when you have a good transition from the metal to the body filler and you don't even feel it. So that's what we're going to do next. So let's move on. And an example of the scratches, see those deeper scratches right there? And you see that hard line on the body filler? We're just going to feather it, which basically just blend it in. And then the 180 grit is going to get rid of most of those harsh sandpaper or grooves, like the sanding grooves. And then we're going to move up to like 320 after that. If you don't get rid of these scratches, most of these are going to show up in the final product. All right, so now that we're done with the 180, we're gonna go over everything with just some 320 and make sure we get the inside crevices, and then we can go over everything with like a Scotch-Brite pad or like 400 grit, and then we'll be ready to prime. All right, now we just go over with our Scotch-Brite pad. Ideally, you want to use red. It's a little bit more coarse. All I have is this gray one, which, I mean, it'll do the job. I just have to sit there and scrub a lot longer than I normally would. Yeah, basically all this is just to scuff up the spots that's really hard to reach with just a regular piece of sandpaper. That way, we can actually prime everything, and the primer will actually have something to grab onto. Because if it's still like shiny paint or anything like that, the primer is not going to grab. All right, guys, so another option for this, whenever you're using like a scrub pad, you can get this scuff stuff. So this, it's a surface prep. So what it does, it not only cleans the surface, but it adds a little more grit to what you're trying to scuff up. And yeah, this works really well. So I'm gonna go over the wheels since I have to clean them off and just pretty much get them ready for paint. This is another good option to pick up. You don't have to do this because you can just go ahead and scuff everything and then wipe everything off with some alcohol. But this is just another step that I recommend, but it's optional. Okay, so for a quick example of using this, I have a bucket of water over here that I'm just going to dip my scrub pad in. And then I'm going to squeeze some of this onto the pad. I'll like fold it in like that, dip a little bit more, oh! And then once you have some of that stuff on the pad, you can dip it in the water again and then just go over the surface. It'll suds up, it'll clean, it'll degrease at the same time, and it'll add just a little bit more grit to what you're trying to scuff up. So I'm gonna go over all 4 wheels, rinse it all off, and then let it dry. And then tomorrow we will be able to prime and then paint it. So I'm going to finish this up, and then I'll see you guys tomorrow. All right, guys, it is day 3, 4, whatever, the next day that we are working on these wheels. Anyway, so we're going to go ahead and lay down some primer on these wheels. So I got them laid out. I got some paper underneath everything. We're going to go ahead and wipe it all down with some alcohol, and then we're going to go ahead and start applying our primer. So the can says apply 2 light coats and then 1 wet coat. So we're going to go ahead and follow that. So let me go ahead and slap you guys on my head, and let's start prepping this. Alrighty, we're going to let that dry for a few minutes, and while that's drying, let's go ahead and shake up our can of primer, throw on our respirator, and let's start spraying. All right, so we're gonna let that sit for about 10 minutes, and we're gonna apply our second coat. All right, guys, we got all 3 coats on. I did the last coat as a wet coat, so I sprayed a little bit longer. And now we just have to let it dry for about 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and then we can go ahead and begin wet sanding these. All right, guys, now that the primer has dried, we can go ahead and wet sand the wheel. So you're gonna get a bucket of water, you're gonna put your wet sandpaper in there. I'm using 800 grit. You can also use 600 grit if you want to. And then we're going to need a spray bottle, so that way we can get the surface wet. And then we're going to go ahead and wet sand everything. And when you know it's done, if you feel the surface before you sand, you know, it's a little rough. But when you're done wet sanding, or while you're wet sanding, you want it to feel like glass when it's wet. And that's when you know all the texture is gone. So this is going to be like the final product. So if you have any texture in your primer, you're gonna have texture in your final product. Now, if it's smooth as glass, you're gonna get a way smoother finish whenever you're done. So yeah, just go ahead and wet sand everything, make sure it's smooth as glass, and once you're done there, you can go ahead and let it dry, and then we can paint the wheel. So let's get to wet sanding. And normally you would use a wet sanding block, so something that's just flat, so when you're on a flat surface, it's just a consistent angle without causing any dips. Now, you're pretty much on these type of wheels, you're only going to use it on like the face of the spokes and maybe like over on the lip right here. Everything else you're going to do by hand. And whenever you're doing it by hand, you want to make sure that you have light pressure. You don't want to dig in too much. Just keep it light. It'll keep the sand marks, like the sand scratches, to a minimum. So keep that in mind whenever you're doing this. And also keep in mind whenever you have like any kind of like lip or anything like that, that will have less paint on it. So try not to burn through it, which means you're just burning through the paint that you put on there or the primer. And you don't really want bare metal. It's okay if you like burn through like a spot or two. It won't matter. But if you're burning through like a huge section here where you can see like the bare metal, you're going to have to reprime that. So try to avoid that. Try to get it just smooth. And then once it's smooth, you're done. All right. There we go. We're all done wet sanding. It feels good. Now, if you have, you don't have to worry about the inner hub area, especially on this type of wheel. But if you want to, you can get a one of those gray Scotch-Brite scrub pads. Get it wet, and then just go ahead and get all the crevices in here. But I'm not going to worry about that since there's going to be a cap over this. So now we're just going to go ahead and just wash off all of the excess loose primer and stuff like that. Go ahead, thoroughly clean it, let it dry off, and then we can go ahead and paint it. All right, guys, so now that the wheels are nice and dry from being rinsed off, we can go ahead and wipe it off with some alcohol again, and then we can start applying our paint. So with this paint, we're going to lay down about 2 to 3 light coats on it, let it dry 10 minutes in between coats, and then on the last coat, we wait 30 minutes before we apply our clear. So we're going to go ahead and follow those steps and then finish off these wheels, and then we will be done completely. So let's jump right in. All right, guys, now it's time to apply our gloss coat. So the back of the can says apply 2 light coats followed by 1 medium coat, waiting 10 minutes in between, and then letting 1 hour to fully dry, and then 1 week to fully cure. So let's go ahead, shake this up, get our mask on, and then start applying these coats. All right, guys, that was the 3rd coat. Now we're going to let it dry I'm actually just gonna go throw it in the shed, let it dry overnight, and then tomorrow we shall see how everything turned out. Hey guys, it's Sloth King from the future. So I never got the outro filmed for the final finish on the wheels, and or maybe it got corrupted. I don't know where the file went. So I put the wheels on the Supra already. So let's go ahead and see how they look, and let's see how good of a job they came out. So here is the final product. It actually looks really, really good. Everything's holding up pretty well. All the curb rash is all gone. This is just one of the wheels. That is just some grime from the tire. Here is the rear wheel. There's a couple of slight imperfections like over here in the corner right here, but overall, they look really good. They look brand new. So hopefully your wheels turn out just as good as mine did. And if they don't, well, it's a learning step. So you can go ahead and do them all over again if you want to. And yeah, just have fun with it. If this video helped you guys out, awesome. I want to check them out. Go ahead and tag me on Instagram with any of the wheels that you've done. I want to see your wheels, see how good they turned out. Anyways, I'll catch you guys on the next ride.